Hi, my name is Angelo Lopez. I'm a Filipino American editorial cartoonist based in the San Francisco Bay Area. And today I'll be talking to two wonderful editorial cartoonists, David Brown and Steve Greenberg. And today we'll be talking about our different responses to a Donald Trump second term. But before I go on that subject, I want to give my condolences and care because David lives in Los Angeles and Steve is a former resident of Los Angeles. So I want to give my care to any friends and family of yours who were affected by the fires. And just, I guess, start out by asking how did the fires affect either you or the Los Angeles community?
Well, for me, because I have several friends that lived in that area, and it was devastating for a lot of folks. And I even had a couple evacuation notices, in my area.
Yeah,
And so it was a scary moment, and it just seemed like it happened so quickly. But to me, what was more disturbing is how it was politicized. I mean, that
yeah,
was particularly disturbing, coming from who.
yeah,
But I think that there is a lot of movement of support, and I think LA has come together to support those people that have lost, so much, in this tragedy. Um, I am a little disappointed and leery about the insurance companies. I mean, for a lot of these places,
yeah,
um, the insurance would either not they didn't insure us or some of the homes or underinsured.
yeah.
And so, and over the last, I guess since the pandemic, several insurance companies left California,
Yeah.
because of the risk. And I know, like, you know, I retired from teaching in 2020, but I'm a consultant with the school district. And
Oh,
so and going into the school system, I have to have liability and insurance for molestation and those things when you're dealing with young people. And it took me 2 months to get insurance.
oh,
So the insurance companies are, they're really trying to build up their reserves since the pandemic, and unfortunately, that hurts home buyers and anyone that's being insured.
okay, okay. Yeah. How about you, Steve? How did it? I
Yeah,
know
well,
you're not. I know you're in Arizona now, but I'm sure you
I,
still have friends and family in
oh,
Los
absolutely.
Angeles.
Yeah. Yeah, this breaks my heart to see what's going on with the fires. I was actually supposed to be right in LA, scheduled to be in LA right as the fires were hitting. I was coming in for a wedding of a niece in Santa Monica,
Oh,
and we had all kinds of plans made. We were going to stay part of the time in an inn in Pacific Palisades, no less. I had friends and family that I was scheduling visits with, and pretty much every person that I want to see either had to actually evacuate or had a plan to evacuate.
yeah.
And the wedding got canceled and the trip got canceled. So I never did get in there, but I was prepared. You know, as the fires are raging, okay, I got a flight scheduled, the next day or two. Um, the publisher of my online forum, crooksandliars.com, he actually lost his home on
Wow.
the edge of Pacific Palisades,
Yeah.
and he was raging at Donald Trump for being so callous and politicizing, and he had some very choice words about that.
Yeah.
Anyhow, I don't know if LA is going to be able to fully come back to what it was because there's a sense of peace and the good life I think has been somewhat shattered for at least the near term. Even if you didn't live in the Palisades or Altadena, um, the fact that this could happen kind of shakes up a sense of, here's a beautiful, peaceful place, and
Yeah.
now, insurance is going to be an issue, finding rents is going to be very difficult. Um, as homes get rebuilt, they're going to have to reconsider zoning and building fire codes and so on. So it's pretty devastating.
Yeah, yeah. I know homelessness is already a problem and stuff. I'm sure it's going to get a lot worse and stuff.
Yeah, homelessness and also the cost of rent and housing in Los Angeles, and that's a huge factor why people can't find affordable housing. But unfortunately, through my perspective, it's the developers that really run Los Angeles. I mean,
Oh,
you,
yeah,
you look at what's happening all over the city,
yeah,
and it's not about the people. It's about the bigger corporations and the Carusos of the world
yeah.
that dominate this city.
Yeah. You meant we were messaging a little bit, and you mentioned a historical black neighborhood and stuff.
Uh-huh.
Could you tell me
Altadena.
about? Yeah, could you tell me about that? Or
Well, there was a time here in Los Angeles where African Americans couldn't rent or buy.
Mhm.
And Altadena was one of those few places where they could, they could buy places. And so there was a whole community that was built around that, much like Tulsa, Oklahoma,
Yeah,
and Greenwood. And so there was a lot of, generational wealth that was built around that community. And unfortunately, a lot of that's going to be lost. And
yeah,
I think when they rebuild, it's probably going to be more gentrified than ever.
yeah,
And
yeah,
so that's going to change that whole culture. And there's so much that's going to be lost historically. So I know I'm doing some things. Matter of fact, I have a new book. I'll get into that a little later.
Oh,
You
okay,
know,
yeah,
to
yeah,
to
sure.
to address that and talk about more about that history that oftentimes is lost.
Okay, okay, okay. Yeah, feel free to promote it and stuff. Okay. Yeah, okay. But okay, so okay. Next question and stuff. Okay. It's been a week now since Donald Trump has been president. Um, I feel the same way, Steve. Okay, so what are your initial thoughts and what are your biggest worries about a second Donald Trump term?
um, you want to go or should I go first?
Uh, well, okay, I'll go this one. It's absolutely horrible. It's pretty much the worst case scenario. There's
Yeah,
just abject cruelty and intentional inflection of damage on the vulnerable and on the environment and on our institutions. And I worry that democracy and the normal sense of safety in our communities could be crushed, possibly forever,
yeah,
especially if the military or Trump militias are willing to shoot fellow Americans. And I worry about the news media further caving in, which
yeah,
costs all of us our cartooning forums and mean even less pushback on Trump's authoritarianism, given how the Republican Congress is just utterly caving into him.
yeah,
So it's just looking like about as bad as the fears were.
yeah. How about you, David?
Well, I absolutely agree, and I I often refer to Hitler, and I on Donald Trump's first inauguration in 2016, I took my students to the Museum of Tolerance, which is in West LA. That that it's about you take a tour through the Holocaust.
Oh,
And what's really scary is the similarities between the strategies of demonizing, certain groups of people and calling them vermins. And I mean, you see it. You see. I mean, it's the exact playbook.
yeah,
And unfortunately, because of America, and because I do think that colonialism, was how America was founded, and I think that, racism is deeply embedded in this culture.
yeah,
And I think Donald Trump has kind of woke up that whole and one of the things he uses that's very powerful is fear.
yeah,
And so there's this fear from, white America that, they're losing their privilege. And I think that that's one of the things that that he utilizes to to maintain his power.
Yeah.
And the second thing I also say too is that I think that being a former teacher, that I think this country has failed us in terms of education. I mean, even because our true history is not really that prevalent and often
Yeah.
whitewashed. When I was in high school, decades ago, it was all about the European culture and very little about the other cultures that have contributed tremendously to making America what it is today.
Yeah.
And one of the things I think about is if America could have embraced all of the other cultures, how much greater we would be. And so that almost sickens me when I think about the amount of talent and creativity and all those things
Yeah.
that, a lot of it's going to be marginalized.
Yeah. I think with me, I know that I see America's potential to be a better nation, and I
Mhm.
worry that Trump is leading us to, how some people, how you want somebody that brings out the best in you, and I worry that
Right.
Trump is bringing out the worst in us.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and stuff. So, but what you mentioned, what you said, kind of leads to my next question and stuff. But are you finished? I guess, or I know with me, I just feel depressed.
No, yeah,
Yeah,
the thing that I struggle with is because I've lost some friends over this conversation, and
yeah, yeah,
I just fear that there are so many people are going to suffer, and even those people that support him and believe in him, they're going to suffer. I mean,
yeah.
and it's preventable.
Yeah, yeah, that's the thing I've lost conservative friends too, and but I keep wondering and stuff is that Trump's going to betray them. His policy is actually going to hurt a lot of these
Yeah, I mean,
supporters.
already he's talking about like Medicare, cutting back on
Yeah,
that, and this health plan that he's what did he
Concept
say?
of a plan.
Oh yeah, right, right. What he said, but the potential or something, some word he used,
yeah,
uh, and the price of food. And I haven't seen it change any, and
yeah,
I don't
yeah,
see any move toward bringing down inflation. I mean, I see him preparing to give millionaires more tax breaks and deregulations, which means more money in their pockets. And
yeah.
but I can go on and on. I digress.
Well, one of the things that you mentioned kind of leads to my next question and stuff. It's that all three of us, our cartoons focus on specific communities. For me, it's the Filipino American community.
Right.
For you, David, it's the African American community, and for
Mhm.
Steve, it's the Jewish community. Now, I have a two-part question. One, what is the difference between doing editorial cartoons geared towards a specific community as opposed to a more general readership? And the second part, what are some responsibilities that you have doing editorial cartoons for a specific community?
Well, I know for me, it's about educating and inspiring. You know,
Yeah,
especially the young people in the community. And I'll just give you a quick scenario. So I work with LAUSD, and they have a specific program for African American students.
yeah,
It's called African American Student Achievement. So and they have funds set aside specifically for that
yeah,
because across the board, African American students don't perform as well academically. I mean, that's a statistic that's real,
yeah,
and there's a number of reasons why that we have those numbers, and so with that program, I get contracts from different schools for me to come in and specifically address issues with African American students. And
yeah.
one of the biggest things has to do with self esteem.
Uh,
And I'll just give you an example. So I'll introduce myself and I'll say I'll say, well, what makes you special?
Yeah.
And most of them don't feel like they're very special. And they'll say, oh, our ancestors were slaves. And so that already, their self-esteem is so low because they aren't inspired by anything other than, the negativity.
Uh,
And so oftentimes I think it's really about understanding they really came from kings and queens.
yeah.
And one of the scenarios I often use is African American athletes couldn't participate in professional sports in the 1920s. Now
Yeah.
you look at the NBA, NFL, and they're over 70%,
Yeah.
75% African American. So I think it has a lot to do with how they see themselves. And if they don't really understand their true history of America, and the contributions African Americans have made to this country, then they're not going to value themselves and in their lives. So they're not inspired to achieve.
One of the things I learned from your cartoons, and I
Mhm.
also noticed this with Eric Garcia's cartoons, is that both of you put history in your cartoons. You try to teach African American history. Eric tried to teach Latino history. So
Right.
after I saw you guys do that, I started doing the same thing about Filipino
Yeah.
American history and stuff. And I thought it was a great idea and stuff. Is that compared to like a cartoonist who does a general
Uh-huh.
audience, I feel a responsibility to teach history to the Filipino American community and stuff. And I learned that from you. So I'm
Yeah.
kind of stealing from you in a way.
No, no, don't think of it that way. Just think about it as inspired,
Yeah,
inspired. You know what I mean? And I mean, I'm glad because I know that I try to get in front of as many African American kids as I can because oftentimes they don't see themselves doing that unless they see someone that looks like them doing what they're inspired to do.
yeah, yeah. Steve, do you do the same thing? Do you also put Jewish history in your cartoons or?
I tend not to. First, I got to say that the Jewish cartooning for me has always been a small subset of what I do. It's never
Okay.
been my main outlet, and
Mm.
it's become a smaller and smaller part of what I do as Jewish press either papers go out of business or they stop running cartoons.
Uh,
And so um, it's 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 a small thing I've done for a long time. Um, I don't put Jewish history in. I will sometimes put Jewish ritual in, Jewish holidays, um, partly because editors like to have cartoons about those things.
yeah,
Uh, and anyhow, for me, doing cartoons for the Jewish press, it's something. Well, um, you have to you have to have an insider's view of the ethnic group, which we all do in our respective communities,
yeah,
and you still have to speak truth, even though some elements of these groups won't appreciate it.
yeah.
So, I'll talk about this more later, like what's going on in the Middle East, but the there are certainly a lot of minefields that have to be navigated, and more recently, it's become much more of a minefield.
Okay, okay. So is the Jewish press shrinking, I guess, or
Yeah,
is
I mean, I think like print in general, it's shrinking, like newspapers in general, it's
okay,
shrinking. And I don't know about other ethnic presses, but the Jewish press, um, they've been contracting in size from, people not reading print, from advertisers going away,
yeah,
from all the pressures of printing and distribution that all print media is going through, uh, you know, competition from the internet and so on. So, but it's always been kind of a small, limited market,
uh,
and I'm I've largely been like the cartoonist for the Jewish press for like 2 decades, just because
so you
there
kind of
are
had a
very few other
monopoly,
people
right?
doing this. Uh,
Right.
When I started about 20 years ago, there was a guy who was self-syndicating his cartoons around, and he didn't do that very long. He only did it for a year or so, and then he
Uh,
disappeared. And I saw, okay, here's a market available. So I started self-syndicating, and some papers have their own contributors, but not that many. And there's one guy in Israel who he was retired by now, and he was kind of like the main, sort of like a four-panel topical gag cartoons about politics, but very, very
yeah.
gentle. And he was probably the most widely run other than me, and he was in Israel. And
Yeah.
I'm not even sure if he's still doing it. I think he's retired. So
Okay.
I sort of had the market, and the market is kind of leaving.
Okay. 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 Oh, before I do anything else, if I seem a little lethargic, I apologize. I have a cold, and just before the meeting, I took this
Okay.
cold and flu medicine, and one of the symptoms is it causes lethargy. So if I don't seem as energetic, it's because I'm kind of struggling with a cold right now. So I apologize and stuff. But Steve, since you kind of alluded to it, I might as well ask this question now and stuff. And this is directed at you. A few years ago, we had a talk, and you mentioned that it was difficult being a liberal Jewish editorial cartoonist during the time of Benjamin Netanyahu. Now, with Donald Trump as president, now you're facing extreme right-wing governments in both Israel and the United States. How does this make it more challenging for you to be a liberal Jewish editorial cartoonist? And what exactly are those challenges that you're facing?
Yeah. Well, first, it's been difficult since the first Trump presidency.
Oh,
Some
okay.
Jewish newspapers eliminated editorial cartoons under the influence of pro-Trump donors and board members. And since, like I said, I've been sort of the main cartoonist for the Jewish press outside of this one Israeli cartoonist, uh, the pullbacks from cartooning in Jewish media largely have affected me.
Yeah.
And I'm including publications in liberal cities such as San Francisco, which, under pressure from pro-Trump board members and donors, they uh, they stopped having cartoons in their paper, even though they're running me. And the same with the
Hmm.
Jewish Journal in Los Angeles. In that case, it was a liberal editor and publisher who left for something else and was succeeded by a conservative who ran my cartoons largely because that was all that was left
Yeah.
available. When he had the opportunity to stop running cartoons at all, he took that, and again, it mostly affected me. Anyhow, dealing with Netanyahu and the war in Gaza, it's just been extremely difficult. The Jewish community is very understandably in sympathy with Israeli suffering during the vicious massacre of October 2023. 1,200 civilians and hundreds of people, civilians who were kidnapped and held hostage by Hamas. And the Jewish press doesn't want to focus on the death toll in Gaza or Netanyahu's single-minded grinding attack there, which is quite conveniently also keeping Netanyahu in power.
Yeah.
And an LA rabbi that I greatly respect, he thinks Netanyahu is cynical enough and self-serving enough that he may have intentionally ignored the warnings about the Hamas attack on October 7th, and in order to give himself an opening to both stay
Hmm.
in power and annihilate Hamas, and maybe allow the far right movement in Israel to grab more Palestinian territory.
Yeah.
So I've done some cartoons that I try to be balanced and point out how some of this is counterproductive to Jewish interests, particularly in this country, which is seen in, the university protests and, rallies and so on. Um, but I'm getting, unfortunately, very little of this published in the Jewish media.
Uh,
Um,
is it more conservative now and stuff? Because a lot of the donors and stuff of the Jewish press, is it sort of I don't is blacklist the wrong word, or is it just that they're silencing any liberal Jewish voices, so, which makes it harder for you?
depends on the publication. They're publications that are quite conservative. There are publications a little more moderate. But the attack on Israel it was like it's been described like Israel's 9/11, and it shook up the Jewish community in America, and there's just this kind of rallying around the, you know,
Yeah.
the Jewish homeland in the Middle East. And so, they want to show solidarity with the Israeli people, with the hostages, and they don't particularly want to publicize death tolls in Gaza.
Yeah.
So, when I've tried to do cartoons that show, some of this is counterproductive, some of this is inflamed anti-Jewish sentiments and anti-Israel sentiments. Um, I'm not sure these cartoons are getting particularly published,
Yeah.
and my market is dwindling and dwindling, and I'm seeing, I got like maybe one really good client left, and the rest occasionally will run a trickle of my cartoons. And at this point, if that one last good client goes away, or they decide not to keep running cartoons, I might even just fold, hang up doing the cartoon
Hmm.
press
That'd be
because,
sad because you're a good cartoonist and stuff. So
yeah.
Can
Also,
I ask? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was also going to say, in dealing with Netanyahu, kind of a no-win situation because the Jewish press won't run criticisms of him, except very mild ones and very occasionally. And if I run any of these cartoons on the progressive website that uses my work, there's just going to be flaming, violently anti-Israel and almost invariably also anti-Jewish comments from the people posting responses. So it's kind of a no-win situation.
sure, you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't.
Yeah.
Okay. David, what were you going to say?
Yeah, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the Black press.
Oh, yeah, sure.
There is an organization called the National Newspaper Association, which is a group of African American newspapers.
Yeah.
And there's probably about, I would say, maybe under 100 um, in this country. I mean, all over domestically.
Are they
And
struggling too? Are they struggling
oh
too?
yeah, well, but they've always struggled.
Oh,
They've always
okay.
struggled.
Okay.
And actually, the paper I work for has been around over 90 years. So actually, it's like the longest run African American newspaper on the West.
Yeah.
And as in regard to political cartoons, I attended an NAACP convention in Atlantic City. I think it was 2 years ago. And so one of the booths there was the National Newspaper Association.
Yeah.
So the National Newspaper Association, like other associations, annually they have awards for the different newspapers.
Yeah.
And so at one time they actually had a category for political cartoons, but
Oh,
they got rid of that category because um, of the 50 papers that were at this booth. Uh, there was only one paper that had a political cartoonist, and that was the paper
wow.
I worked. So,
Same with the
um,
Jewish press, pretty much. They also eliminated their awards for cartooning.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah. I mean, because of and I think a lot of it just has to do with money, budget, you know,
yeah.
um, and I don't know. I mean, I guess they don't really feel that people read political cartoons that much, or
Yeah. But I got dropped from the Philippine News Today in
uh,
2023 and stuff. So
um,
I guess Steve, I guess both you and I are kind of homeless right now in terms of our cartoons. I still do stuff for the cartoon movement and cartooning for peace, but they want us to do stuff on Europe. I know nothing about
yeah,
Europe.
yeah.
So I kind of envy you, Dave, because you're still in the LA Center.
Well, well, I mean, I monetarily, I don't really make that much money doing working for them, but
Yeah.
I do feel, but being associated with the paper, it gives me leverage
Yeah.
and resources. Um, but monetarily, it's not really, it's, you know,
I
but
didn't earn
again,
very much income.
again, but I can also leverage, for ad space, or I have a good relationship with my editor,
Yeah, yeah.
so I have leverage when I'm promoting things that are important to me, or if I have a press release for somebody that I respect, that I think needs to get some exposure. There's other values in terms of that, but I just want to kind of mention how with the demise of the newspaper industry in general. Um, I mean, when I joined the American Association of Editorial Cartoonists, I think there was like 600 members. I think that was in 2005, and Steve, I think you were a member before I was.
Oh yeah, I've been a member for a long, long time.
Are you boys getting rowdy in here?
Yeah. Hi, how are you?
Hi guys,
Roberta.
David,
Yeah,
Angelo.
hi, Roberta. I
Hi, how
met
you
you.
doing?
You and Steve are actually the first two people I ever met in a convention. I was getting out of the elevator when the elevator opened up. You two were there and stuff. So
Remember that day?
you two, it was in the Portland and stuff.
Yeah.
2008, 2009, I forgot when that was. You two were the very first people I ever met.
Oh.
So you look the same, and we look a lot older. I don't
No,
know.
no, no. How's
I
Arizona?
just can't.
How's
Except for
Arizona?
they never age. What's that?
How's
Arizona
Arizona?
is freaking hot, man.
Oh,
It's so hot.
oh,
Our
okay.
our brains melted last summer.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah.
That's our excuse.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming back, and thank you, Steve, for having Roberta come speak with us. If she has any opinions and stuff, feel free to have her come into Zoom and share with us. And I want to apologize again because I have this is the flu and
Okay.
cold thing. I don't know. I'm usually not this lethargic, but for whatever reason, my mind seems to be in a fog right now. But yeah, yeah. Did you want to say anything, David, or?
No, I'm not. I just wanted to just kind of follow up on what we were talking about how important history is.
Yeah, okay.
Uh,
Well, let me ask this question and you can add your talk on history on this and stuff because this particular question is directed at you and stuff.
uh-huh.
In 2016, ever since 2016, I've occasionally had difficult discussions with Asian American Trump supporters.
Uh-huh.
And I know, and I read somewhere that during the last elections, um, a significant number of working class Black and Latino voters
Yeah.
went for Trump. I guess, do you have any ideas on why they went for Trump? And I guess you can also add your comment on the importance of history with your answer.
Yeah, well, I think part of it is this whole masculinity thing, with
Um,
Trump, and first of all, I want to. I think there was this whole image of Donald Trump when he had that whole persona from that television show,
yeah,
um,
was it The
and
Apprentice?
the
The Apprentice.
Apprentice show. And I actually watched The Apprentice. I thought it was compelling and interesting. And but that was a whole image that was created.
Yeah.
So you have this whole image of him being this successful businessman when actually the facts say the contrary.
Oh, okay.
I mean, the fact of the matter, and I have personal experience dealing with, because I grew up outside of Atlantic City, and the school I went to was outside of Atlantic City, and they had the Trump Casino.
Oh,
And I know people that personally worked, contracted with him, that he didn't pay. I mean,
oh,
he was terrible. And then he bankrupted the casino. How do you bankrupt a casino? You know?
yeah, yeah,
Takes a particular level of incompetence to do that.
Yeah,
yeah.
I mean, his dad left him millions of dollars. But if you go to, and I won't go into all the things he's bankrupt, but there was Trump Steaks, there was Trump Water, there was Trump University,
Yeah.
um, and I can go on the things
Yeah.
that he's bankrupt. But I think that kind of goes back to what I was saying about education and being informed. I
Yeah.
mean, and I quote him, he personally said he likes the ignorant and uneducated. He said that.
Yeah.
And that's why he said that he likes Republicans for that reason.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Is
I
there
think that
part of their vote and stuff because they don't know history stuff? I
they
mean,
don't know the history. Yeah, I mean, I taught in South Central Los Angeles,
yeah.
and the school system is not really. I mean, it was really distressing for me because I came from corporate America. I worked in advertising and film and television for decades before I started teaching.
Yeah.
And so what amazed me is how little they were really learning, in
Mhm.
the schools, and
Yeah.
specifically about African American culture.
Yeah.
Um, and so, and now probably more than ever, we got phones and social media, and so they aren't learning, about you know the culture and our history, and
Yeah.
so that's I think that's a failure on the part of our government. But then again, you got politicians, and what do the politicians want to do? They want to keep you naive,
Yeah.
so they can hold on to their power and control.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
I'm curious, is there a significant conservative African American or with you,
um,
Steve, is there a significant Jewish conservative influence and stuff?
yeah, yeah, I think there is, um, because I mean, I'm an entrepreneur, so there's conservative values that I have
Yeah.
in terms of that. But I think that I guess it depends on what you mean by conservative. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah,
I
because
mean, in
to
my
me,
mind,
it doesn't make sense for a conservative to support Trump.
well,
I've never
well,
understood that and stuff,
when I think about conservative values, I can go back to thinking about being business values, you
Yeah.
know, and law and order values. I mean, those are what I consider, conservative, values. But I think they've been influenced and by the whole MAGA movement, and that that looks a whole lot different. I mean, it reminds me of the Tea Party folks, and so
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
uh, very similar, to that. Um, so yeah, I mean, I can't really know exactly why, an African American or a Latino person, and I've had these conversations, these tough conversations,
Are
and
these
I've
some of the
lost
friends that you
friends.
lost? These are the friends that you
Yeah,
lost? Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I don't want to confuse it with the people I lost in the in the fires, but I'm saying that, but politically, there's people that it's hard for me to even talk to them,
Yeah.
because of the Trump, and then Trump is almost like a celebrity thing that they like about him, and 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 I think oftentimes they go, well, he tells it like it is, but but the biggest thing that bothers me more than anything else is his values. I mean, what message is that telling, young people that it's okay to cheat, it's okay to break the law as long as
It's,
you can get away
yeah.
with it, and it moves you forward,
Yeah.
and make fun of handicapped people and other nationalities, and I think oftentimes America forgets that you know Europeans are immigrants.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I know with Asian Americans, in Trump's last year, he was scapegoating Asian Americans for COVID. And then
Yeah.
when he made that comment about Haitian immigrants eating dogs and cats,
Oh
that's what
God.
they used to say about Filipinos and
Yeah.
stuff. And I keep thinking like what you were saying about history, why don't what this is why this the thing about Trump scapegoating Asian Americans, this is recent history. And I keep thinking, why are you voting for your own oppression and stuff? Steve, I mean, I'm going to try to include you in this conversation, but do you face pushback from conservative Jewish I don't know, groups, I guess, for similar things and stuff. Because doesn't Trump, if Trump is getting a lot of support from white nationalists, and a lot of white nationalists are anti-Semitic, to me it doesn't make sense for somebody Jewish to be voting for Trump and stuff. So
I totally agree. The Jewish community is not monolithic by any means.
Right.
The Orthodox is the most conservative branch, and um, for reasons I really don't fully understand, they have been supporting Trump. They've they believe that Trump has been good for Israel because he supports Netanyahu lockstep. They believe Trump is good for Israel because Trump was willing to have the U.S. embassy moved to Jerusalem from Tel Aviv. Um, and the Orthodox community is growing because they have more kids, and demographically they're growing larger. The more middle and liberal branches of Judaism in the United States are not Trump supporters at all, and Trump completely violates the values of Jewish teaching. Uh, David, I wanted to ask you
Sure.
if you started to say that I guess the African American community kind of leaned toward Trump because of masculinity and macho. If Kamala Harris had been a man of color named Cameron Harris, do you think more of the black community would have
You know,
voted
you know,
for that
you know, that's a good question, and I do think that because she was a woman, uh, the perception is that she's not as strong, and I think maybe that's more embedded in the American culture widely as opposed to the specific African American community. But I think when you look at power in this country and in general, usually African American women are at the bottom of the totem pole, you
yeah,
know. And so I do think that there's a perception of weakness and really some of the nastiness that came out, the things that the name calling and
yeah,
she slept her way I mean, all that. I mean, you would never hear that from a man
yeah, yeah,
about a man. And just like Hillary, I mean, although Hillary, I don't think Hillary was good as a candidate as Kamala Harris was, but I think um, her being a woman, I don't think it helped. Let me just put it that way. I don't think it helped. But statistically, the race really was close, closer than the perception is.
yeah,
So I think a lot of it had to do with folks that just didn't show up. They didn't like either candidate, and they didn't show up.
yeah. Is it just burnout? I think, you think it's just people are burnt out
Um,
because,
yeah,
after,
yeah, I think so. And I think the whole thing with Biden, I do think he waited too long you know, to resign. She only had 100 days.
yeah,
I mean, I think that was part of it, and I don't think people really knew her um, at all. And so I don't know. I mean, I think there was a lot of factors, and I know it's easy for people to blame Democrats for it, but I just think that a lot of people they just didn't care. They just didn't care.
yeah,
I'm always amused that everybody talks about Trump as the manly, macho, you know, male strength symbol, and he wears makeup, high heels, a girdle, and he fusses with his hair for hours, and he throws a fit.
yeah. I think with me, it's just, I think the thing that bothers me is the support among evangelical Christians towards Trump and stuff. I've, that's always bothered me and stuff. And I keep thinking, because I remember I went to an Asian American evangelical church in the 90s, and I remember their criticism of Clinton. And, a lot of the things they criticized Clinton for, Trump is actually more guilty of that than Clinton was. And
Wow.
they're giving him, it doesn't make sense for me, but I feel a lot of the loss of my conservative friends were among formerly close conservative Christian friends and stuff. And when I lost their friendship, I think part of it was just you know, you don't realize how crazy something is until you leave a certain situation. That was sort of my feeling when I left that social circle and stuff. But I felt kind of sad for them because I kind of feel like they got deluded. You know where it's a mass delusion. I don't know what it is and stuff. It's like they got caught in this group thing. You know, where
Well,
they're
if I can add to that about the religious part of it, because I grew up in a Baptist church,
yeah,
and I think there is a connection between like Christian nationalism and the Baptist church and this whole religious phenomena. And I think that some people actually believe that Trump has some Christian values for some reason,
yeah,
and those people like a specific friend of mine that he's very religious, and so he watched like the 700 Club
oh,
and Fox News and all of that. I think just kind of warps his perception.
yeah,
I can't help but believe that some of those Christian values and when you really get into religion and this is my personal opinion, I think religion, especially growing up in a Baptist church. And I think that a lot of it is delusional, I mean, and this whole idea of heaven and hell and being and I think that sometimes that's they look at him as like some kind of demigod.
yeah,
And I don't quite understand it, but it almost feels like it's a religion.
yeah. Hey,
I
Steve,
think that
is there a similar thing? Because are you a secular Jewish person? Do you have a similar issue with like, because you were mentioning about the Orthodox and their devotion to Trump. Is that similar with in the Jewish uh, community with the Orth? Is that similar to Christian nationalism among Christians,
um,
or is that a little different?
I think it's a little different. I mean, Jewish values are completely contrary to what Trump does, says, and you know, performs.
Yeah,
The Jewish values are not unlike, Jesus' values. Support the needy, the poor, the stranger in your land. Be tolerant. Um, the A lot of voters, including the evangelicals in Christianity, they support Trump not because they think he's a good Christian, but because that he represents a vote against abortion. It's single issue.
Right. Yeah,
And
you're right. You make a really good point about that.
yeah,
in the Jewish community, Orthodox who should be really focusing on Jewish values and Jewish, they call them the mitzvot, the things that a good Jewish person is supposed to do. Includes like being charitable to the poor and the stranger and so on. Trump is so completely opposite that, but they're they're voting because they somehow perceive him as being better for Israel, which is a very arguable point. I don't think supporting Netanyahu lockstep has been good for Israel. It certainly has not been good for the Jewish community in America. It's been actually horrible. Um, the Jewish community has been uh, is like the Asian community under Trump, demonized like they weren't before because of what's going on in Gaza and the more moderate parts of the Jewish community in America hate Trump. They're just appalled by what he does. As same with the more moderate Christian uh, people in America. Look at the values that are said and carried out.
yeah,
Trump is completely in violation of all these values that we purport to hold dear. And it's just certain far right groups of any religion that see Trump as sort of a convenient tool to get what they specifically want for their particular
Yeah.
interest.
Let me just add to that because you make a good point because for instance, they will often find a wedge issue like gay marriage or or abortion and use that as a way to support Trump,
Yeah.
you know, and not look at all the other stuff that he does. But they say, but he believes in life, But look at all the other stuff he does. So oftentimes they'll use those wedge issues to
Yeah.
make the argument why, they support him, you
Yeah.
know, or they say, gay marriage. Oh, that's not in the Bible, so,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
or, so I think oftentimes it's those wedge issues too.
Yeah.
When
You
you when
know,
you when you have people that are religious,
yeah. Yeah. I'm in talking to you too, and I guess sort of with me too, there's a big, deep sense of bafflement. I don't know if that's right,
All right.
about this and stuff. Is that so a lot of this doesn't make any sense, but I'm kind of curious. I'm gonna kind of push this along with my next question is that even though we're baffled by all of this stuff, do you think that there's any chance that we can try to bridge some of these political divides, or is it too, because I worry that if we don't bridge these divides, it's not a good sign for this country. It's going to be difficult for the democracy to function if we can't find common ground and stuff. But if I feel like Fox News and stuff is making it difficult for us to find common ground. And does my question make any sense or no?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I would just say to that I think that the Fox News, uh, and the whole mega movement, they they use fear. I mean, that's what I
Mhm.
mean. They're eating our dogs and cats. Come on, what's that? You
Yeah,
know, and you know they're taking our jobs. There's no truth to that. So using fear and also to feel like they're losing something. Like you got a lot of America that feels like they're losing something, and I have a theory about Barack Obama's presidency because you know Barack Obama was in power for 8 years, and I can't help but feel that a lot of white America was just not comfortable with that. I mean, they attacked him, and he was a family man, he was well educated, well spoken, a unifier, and they demonized him. And Trump was the main one that was, he wasn't born here
yeah,
and other, things. So I think continually to use, hate and fear to divide us,
yeah,
and so that's been a very effective way when you think about his rise to power politically. He's done it by demonizing other people and using fear, using hate, or the immigrants, and you don't see them blocking off the northern border of America, do you?
yeah,
So just something to think about, and so that's been really effective in dividing us, and so it's and it's really hard if he's the leader to, not, be sucked into that if that's all you're hearing.
yeah. What do you think, Steve? Do you think we have any hope of bridging some of these divides, I guess, or
I am losing hope, really. You've got organizations like Fox News and the right-wing echo chamber that are deliberately trying to inflame these divisions because it's good ratings. And you have politicians like Trump and the MAGA movement that are deliberately trying to demonize the other, demonize the brown and black and non-Christian people, um, for their power. So there's a lot of vested interest in not having us come together. And I think like one of the sort of I don't know, metaphorical things is, well, if there was a big threat to America, we'd all come together. If there was, an alien invasion, we'd all come together. Or, Russia invaded us, we'd all come together. But we had an invasion in 2020. We had COVID, and that should have been a moment where Americans came together and showed empathy for one another and tried to support one another. And COVID became politicized, and it was, you wear a mask or you don't wear a mask because you're not cheap, and you know
Yeah.
uh, you follow the guidelines of the CDC and Anthony Fauci, or no, it's a plot to you know subjugate America. So we had that kind of outside threat, and the moment that we could have come together, and the moment where Trump could have united us, and that didn't happen. We went even more polarized. So I'm not real hopeful of us.
Yeah.
And Joe Biden was about as conciliatory a politician as we could have lately, and he was trying to bridge the gap, and he was not having a lot of success because these divisions are so
Mhm.
firmed
Yeah.
up.
Yeah. I think for me, part of it's personal because I think like David, you were mentioning, I mean, we lost friends and stuff. And um, you know, um, it was tough to see friendships start to fall apart, and somebody that that you care about and stuff became somebody that you didn't recognize anymore. I don't know, David, when you lost your friendship, was that the feeling, I guess, or?
Well, yeah, but I think what it came down to, it's not so much about Trump, but it's also about your values. I mean, if I mean, I grew up in the Baptist church, and it's about empathy. It's about caring for your fellow man, and treating people the way you want to be treated. And if you choose a leader that doesn't embody that, then what does that say about you
Mhm.
and your values?
Yeah, yeah, okay.
I mean,
Um,
that's kind of the way I look at it. Is that if you if you embrace someone that behaves the way he does, then you're okay with those kind of values. You're okay to being treated that way.
yeah, yeah. Okay, yeah, I don't have. I think for me, I think the pain is still too fresh, I guess, for some of those
Mm,
friendship
yeah.
breakups, I guess, and stuff. So I haven't really processed and under. I keep talking about it because I don't think I've really processed it yet, and I still don't understand a lot of it. But I think the pain is still there and stuff. So yeah, but okay. Well, on that glum subject, let me switch to something else. For both of you, for both of you. I'm sorry. I'm worried that because we're talking about Trump, this is going to be a depressed talk. but but I'm wondering, this is okay. This will be a talk about our cartooning profession. And so,
Uh-huh.
with the decline in newspapers, for both of you, how do you see editorial cartooning and I guess comic strip, cartooning? Because Steve, you do a comic strip about boomers, right? How do you see those two forms of cartooning evolving in the future? Because now that newspapers are declining.
It's tough. I mean, half of my work right now is online, and I imagine larger percentage of that is going to be online as newspapers continue to fade away and print keeps declining. But it's getting harder and harder to find places online that'll pay anything or pay anything that is significant. A lot of them won't pay anything whatsoever. Um, for me personally, I never had the visibility or the following to make a success of things like Substack or Patreon. So cartooning for me would just become more and more side income. You know, it,
Mhm.
at some point, I might not have any paying forums left, and I might have to redirect my energies into something else like painting or some
Mhm.
outlet.
What about you,
Well,
Dave? What do you think?
I agree. I mean, I think that the craft of political cartooning is on its demise, and I mean, just look at the American Association of Editorial Cartoonists. I mean, what do we have? Like maybe a couple hundred members now. or less.
Yeah, we'll probably have a couple hundred.
Yeah. So I just think that the craft is on its demise, and I think the sad part about it is that you know the next generation, will they be inspired to even want to do it? You know,
Yeah.
or but as far as me personally, I'm going to continue to do it as long as, I have that a platform to do it because I do think it's a powerful platform. And then I think one of the other things that makes me unique is I'm one of the few African Americans doing it,
Yeah. Yeah.
and but I've been used to that throughout my career, being the
Yeah.
only, minority in the room. Um, but I am also career-wise, directing myself more to the whole teaching component. Um, I'm also doing more lecturing,
Yeah.
do more presentations. Um, and so that's the direction that I'm taking my career. And in terms of guest lecturer I mean, I've done it for all the UCs here in Southern California, and I often talk with political science, classes, art classes, and because it's kind of a hybrid when you think about the
Yeah.
craft of political cartoon, a hybrid of, the political science component, and then you also have the art component of it.
Yeah.
But I mean, there was a time when I used to get, emails and calls about them wanting to use my cartoons for a presentation, maybe for a book, and those kind of
Yeah.
things. And now people, once you put it on the internet, then it's gone. People, I mean, I can Google myself and buy my cartoons on all over the internet,
Oh, okay.
so,
I want to
but
Okay.
throw I
Yeah.
want to throw
I'm sorry.
that even though our ranks are somewhat smaller and
Mm.
our forums on print newspapers are disappearing, and some people say, well, we're a you know near extinction of a profession.
Yeah.
I want to say that the work that's being turned out lately is really as good as it's ever been, maybe even better than ever in the
Yeah.
history of editorial cartooning. I mean, yeah, some really good practitioners of the past aren't doing it now. You don't have Oliphant, you don't have McNally, you don't have
Right, right.
Steve Sack, you don't have Tom Tolles, whatever. But there's so many good practitioners. I mean, you guys are doing wonderful work. Lala's doing wonderful work. We have
Yeah.
just incredible cartoonists and thinkers. We have Ann Telnis, Steve Broadner, we have
Um,
Clay Bennett,
Da-
Pat.
David Horsley.
Yeah.
I mean, there's such really good work being done. There's more diversity. Um, there's a lot more women who are contributing. Jen
Mm.
Sorensen. Um, we are lacking people who are in their 40s or younger. There's
I think there's
Yeah.
one. I think it was
but,
Alexandra. I think she's the only
but
one.
still, um, even still, the quality, the work being done is as good as ever in our whole history of editorial cartooning. And some of the younger people, they're doing commentary cartooning. And I was suggesting to the Association of American Editorial Cartoons we should change the name to something that's not editorial cartooning in the name because there's work being done like Daryl Cagle's daughter, Susie Cagle, has been doing brilliant long form, sort of like
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
almost like graphic novel sorts of things
Mm.
where, taking a topic and in long online scrolling pieces, doing brilliant hard-hitting work. And the nib, which doesn't quite exist as an ongoing thing anymore online, but they still come out with special editions of,
Mhm.
there's still really good stuff being done, and some of it's in different forms. And then, the younger people may not call it political cartooning or
Right.
cartooning,
Yeah.
but there's still great commentary and I think more diversity than ever.
Yeah. You know, we have 5 minutes left for
Mhm.
this talk, but you know,
Yeah.
Steve, you no. You're actually kind of answering one of my last question is why are editorial cartoons important and stuff. So if both of you want to contribute that in the last 5 minutes and stuff, feel free.
Okay. All right, Steve, you want to go? I'll go.
Okay.
Um, so repeat the question one more time for me,
No, just
please.
why are editorial cartoons still important?
Well, I think that there's a very powerful way of conveying, a message and what's going on in the world that's much different than reading a paragraph. And I think
Yeah,
because it's visual, it stays in your head. And I think it resonates a whole lot more powerful than just reading a paragraph, or an essay.
yeah,
And I think that's really important. And you have the tools to use exaggeration, analogy,
yeah,
irony, uh, to do that. And so I just think that it's just a very powerful way of conveying messages,
yeah.
unlike other mediums.
Okay.
I see us being sort of like with this Trump administration. I sort of see editorial cartoons being the smoke alarm of media. We're loud and attention getting, and that's a good thing because there is so much risk and danger going on right now to our rights, to our Constitution, to our finances. And I think editorial cartoons, because they're visual, they're quick impact, high impact, I think that makes it very important. As David says, people may not read paragraphs or essays or whatever, but the cartoon is going to hit quickly and it's going to have some impact. And I
Yeah.
think um, there is so much danger that needs to be called out right now to preserve our liberties and our democracy. And editorial cartoons are just a strong strong messenger of that stuff, like sort of like the warning signals to society to, hey, this is really important. Pay attention for even a few seconds and
Yeah.
look at this message. You know, you gotta pay attention here.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you both and stuff. You both are good friends, and I appreciate both. You know, you're also both great editorial cartoonists. Let's. I don't know. I wish I could. I wish I had something better to say, but I just wish you guys well in the next 4 years and stuff, and that you guys continue, as Steve said, warn us of things that we need to see and stuff. So thank you.
Okay. So I just want to plug a couple of things that I'm doing. So
Oh yeah, yeah, sure.
so
You
I
got you
so I
got two
am
minutes, so go
I,
ahead.
okay. So I'll be brief. So I am doing another book. I'm going to launch a Kickstarter next month,
Okay.
and basically it's going to be kind of a synopsis, a collection of my cartoons over the last 2 decades with the Sentinel,
Oh,
because I've been
okay.
there like over 2 decades. And so it's going to be similar to my previous book, except it's going to be pretty much all my work. I
Yeah.
also going to have a section dedicated to the history about the Altadena in the historical Black
Oh, okay.
community. And I'm also going to be doing some fundraising, to contribute to that through my book.
Okay.
Additionally, I have a meeting next week to talk about an art exhibit I may be having in South Central at the Watchtowers Art Center,
Oh,
and that'll be sometime this spring.
okay.
So I'm excited about both of those things happening.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. And you did it in a minute. So thank you. So
That's why
thank you both and
I
stuff.
that my move to Arizona, which was for the relationship with Roberta, who made her cameo appearance. I'm in Tempe, which is outside of Phoenix. There are no newspapers in the whole Phoenix metro area that run any political cartoons, but the
Wow.
paper 2 hours south in Tucson still believes in the craft. They still run two a day. The current editor is somebody I worked with decades ago in Seattle, and he's very supportive. And this has given me a renaissance. So I become sort of like the default editorial cartoons for Arizona.
Okay.
I've also had a renaissance of being in a daily print newspaper again that still believes in our craft. And so I'm quite grateful for that, for this, like resurgence of what I'm doing with a supportive editor.
Yeah, okay. Well, thank you both. I think that's less than a minute.